Speaking English isn't just one skill, it's a combination of skills, and if you only focus on the fluency part of speaking and you still wonder, why do I keep making the same mistakes in English? You might risk repeating those mistakes, even if they are mistakes you've already noticed yourself or you've got feedback on. If you've been subscribed to my channel for a while, you know my stand on mistakes. The best way for us to make a lot of progress with our fluency is to treat ourselves with compassion. We're human beings, everyone makes mistakes all the time, but making mistakes and getting feedback on those mistakes only makes sense if we actually learn from those mistakes. And if you often wonder, why do I keep repeating the same mistakes in English? In this video, you're going to get a few strategies that will help you focus on the two separate speaking strategies, which will help you gradually get rid of those nasty mistakes. When you speak English fluently, that means you speak what you have automatized through the months and years of work, everything you've listened to, you've read, and you've actively practiced. Most of the mistakes that struggling English students make, these could be things that I often hear from my Spanish-speaking students when they say people is, or when my Japanese-speaking students say I will teach you when I'm available, come from translating word by word from our first language. So they would be the equivalents of la gente es and yo te ga aiteru koto o shie. It's normal. Most of us spend a decade at school being taught how to memorize a word with its translation, when in reality, knowing a word is so much more than just knowing its translation and its spelling. So it's one of the worst strategies for us to follow as adults, because most of us are out of school. So the same strategies will potentially not work as well in real life. And to help you avoid making unnecessary mistakes because you're translating from your first language, I put together a video where I talk more about how to naturally learn English to be able to naturally speak English. What's even more important for you to consider though, if you want to stop repeating the same mistakes in English, is to understand how fluency is the result, is the performance of everything that you have automatized throughout the years, including the mistakes that you have repeated. That's why it's hard to simply just stop and reflect on what we've just said, because when we focus on having a natural conversation with another person, we will generally focus on communicating as much as we can to the best of our abilities. So it's difficult to correct ourselves as we are speaking, but towards the end of the video, I'm going to talk a bit more about a way you can start building that skill. But first, let's just understand how there are always two ways you can practice speaking English. You can either practice fluency, which is when you just focus on making sure that you communicate as much as you can, not really caring about any sort of mistake you make, and practicing automatizing more, which is what we call speaking practice. Fluency is nothing else but a combination of habits that we've automatized. So just like when we are starting a new hobby, let's say one day you decide to go to work in a completely different way. Maybe and the next day when you want to go the same way, you will automatically start going the usual way and then realize, oh shoot, I should have started the new way. In order for you to automatize going to work the new way, you will need to pay conscious attention every single morning to say, I'm not going to go the usual way because I know there is a faster way, and I'm going to intentionally go the new way until it becomes automatic. This is especially important if you've already reached a good intermediate level of English, because that's where we need to keep pushing to find ways to express ourselves in different ways. This is where what we focus on with my students is to help them use more complex grammar and to express themselves with a wider range of vocabulary, which we can only achieve if we get out of our habits trying to focus on using alternatives or different, more effective ways of expressing ourselves. Hey English learner, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I know that there's many returning visitors to my videos. My name is Chubby. I'm an English fluency, learning and language anxiety coach, originally from Hungary. This is a channel for serious English learners who want to learn how to make vocabulary more memorable and how to speak English more freely, confidently and comfortably with the help of listening and spoken interaction. So these are topics that you're into, you'd like to find out more about. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so I can send you all sorts of stuff all about listening, speaking, vocabulary, confidence, and fluency as well. In my community, especially in my fluency program, the Proficiency Fortress, we have two types of speaking classes. One that we call conversation circles. These are the type of classes where students have the opportunity to practice free talk, basically practice communicating everything that they've automatized before. And then we have our speaking booster classes, where we especially focus on expressing ourselves with much more complex grammar, communicating more effectively, and using a wider range of vocabulary. So it's more about intentionally helping my students fine-tune their English fluency. And we do this because the human brain can't focus both on how we say things and what we are saying. And more often than not, we humans focus on what we are trying to say as effectively as possible. We are not going like, oh, so in order for me to talk about what happened to me yesterday, I'm going to use past perfect when I'm speaking to Maria. And that's the fluency aspect of speaking. When you already got feedback on your mistakes, but you feel like you keep repeating them, the only way you're going to find ways not to make the same mistake again is if you start paying conscious attention to those mistakes. As we said before, these are mistakes you've already automatized. And until you choose to take these mistakes off the autopilot, many times in the future, when we don't pay attention to these mistakes, you're going to keep making the same mistakes. And this is why continuously requesting constructive feedback is so crucial for us to massively improve our fluency, because the truth is we can't improve what we don't know. So I prefer to know what I have to improve, which is feedback, so I don't have to repeat the things that I don't know, that I make mistakes with. And when thanks to this constructive feedback, we actually know what we should focus on, what we should improve, we will start paying more attention to it, to improving it, and then learn to express ourselves way better. One of the ways we do this inside my community in our speaking booster classes, which are the classes where we focus on communicating more effectively, using a wider range of vocabulary and grammar, is that we do a task, a speaking activity, or a project not only once. Students usually get a task, whether it's sharing their opinions on stuff, or working out a marketing plan for orange juice, or to discuss the benefits and drawbacks of artificial intelligence. They practice talking freely while the teacher is taking notes of whatever mistakes they might make about grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. And then after the activity, they get feedback on the way they communicate and all the other aspects of their English. Once they've done, they get feedback on the way they communicated, all kinds of aspects of their English, but also they are offered alternatives about how to express themselves more effectively. We know that feedback isn't just about correction on mistakes. Students have access to the feedback not only on their mistakes, but also on the mistakes other people have made, so they could learn from it and prepare for the next time, which is usually 1 week or 2 weeks later, when we maybe do the same task again, but with a little twist or with different details. So my students have the opportunity to be more intentional about the way they use the language, so they don't make the same mistakes, and this way they could automatize the correct way of saying things. You probably know the motto I've always used that helped me learn to speak English effectively: less is more. And if not, have a look at these 2 videos, which will explain to you how having a strong foundation of grammar and vocabulary is going to be the key to building your confidence through systematically reviewing vocabulary and grammar and everything else you need to get better at, which is a core part of my program, the Proficiency Fortress, and one of the reasons my students are so successful in speaking English fluently. Just like listening to the same audio, the same interviews, the same videos will help you get better at understanding fast English speakers much more effectively. Repeating the same speaking task or talking about the same topic, but this time with all the feedback, stronger and more confident, you'll be able to learn so much more and say things way more effectively. But sometimes it's still not enough to eliminate all the mistakes that we make, and struggling English students often find themselves feeling guilty or frustrated and ask, why do I keep repeating the same mistakes in English? Not realizing that de-automatizing the mistakes we make is a process. My students are able to break away from keeping on repeating those mistakes like people is or depend of, as long as they have a positive mindset about mistakes, they look at them as a way to learn to say things better. And when they do their best to concentrate on noticing whenever they make those mistakes so they can eliminate them. First, you don't notice the mistakes you make because that's why they are mistakes. If you knew that they were mistakes, you wouldn't make them. That's why feedback is so crucial. Once you get the feedback, you're going to pay more attention to the words, expressions, or sentences that you usually make mistakes with. But once you get the feedback, you still have the choice of taking that feedback and using that to make sure you focus on the mistakes you make, or ignore the feedback you get on your mistakes. And as you start paying more attention to it, you might still be making mistakes with it, but there are going to be times when you say it correctly, because again, de-automatizing the mistakes is a process. As long as you keep speaking, especially if you intentionally practice saying those expressions that you often make mistakes with, you're going to increase the number of times you're going to get it right. This is basically the definition of trying, and why making mistakes and failing is going to be so important. The more we try, the more we increase the chances of getting it right. And if we don't look at the individual trials whenever we fail or succeed, we can have a look at the process where the number of times we get it right is going to increase as long as we keep trying. Just remember, you needed to fall 19 times in an hour in order for you to learn how to walk back in those days. And if you're looking for a space where you can practice having conversations with other people and discuss different things with people from all around the world, you can join our free community, Build Your Fluency, where you will have the opportunity to participate in our conversation circles, fluency trainings as well, to help you understand exactly what you need to focus on, and have speaking challenges so you can learn to speak English as fluently and confidently as humanly possible. Make sure you check out the first link in the description below and join us today. Using this next strategy varies by learner. There's the type of learner who wants to focus on conveying their message, communicating as much as they can, so they won't focus too much on the mistakes they make. And even after constant reminders and feedback on the mistakes that they make, they won't be able to notice them because they focus so much on conveying the message. Those learners who have developed the skill of self-reflection or monitoring whenever they speak are going to be able to make so much more progress with the mistakes that they make, because they are paying so much attention to what they are saying and how they are saying it. Remember, focusing on both is a challenge, but it's a skill that you could basically start building from today. When you take any opportunity to practice speaking, not just practicing speaking for the sake of speaking, but to use the opportunity to get better at expressing yourself, you're going to start focusing on not just what you want to say, but how you could express yourself the best way possible. We just need to find a balance between not being seriously worried about the potential mistakes we're going to make, but also monitoring the words we use so we can actually find ways to express ourselves better. Now, which of these two types of learners are you? Are you the type of learner who just focuses on communicating, having conversations with other people to convey your message, or the one who keeps track of what they say and how they say things, and as a result they can reflect on the mistakes they got feedback on and then learn to say things better? Hope this video helped you clarify a few things around mistakes and feedback, and understand that there's nothing wrong with making mistakes as long as you get feedback on it, and as long as you learn from that feedback, accepting that feedback, taking that feedback in and using the feedback to express themselves better is also a choice that successful English communicators need to make. And that there are two ways you can practice speaking English if you haven't done this before, or at least not in this way. You can practice your fluency, which is when you practice communicating using everything you've automatized, or you can do speaking practice, where you intentionally focus on getting better at whatever you need to improve about your English. What's your biggest takeaway from this video, and which of these strategies are you going to start applying so you no longer say, why do I keep repeating the same mistakes in English? Pop your comments or questions in the comments, and hope to see you in another video.